Well, now, I've got another camera angle. Okay, day 28. I am working on Rook proper, finishing up some of the stuff I started yesterday. What started as investigating web environments and why they were so noisy ended up in me quickly destroying all web environments and seeing a very clean list of application environments, so that's good. But I figured out that what I needed to do is some of the client code for the Mac client had gotten a little bit out of hand. I had a file in there that was like 4,000 lines long or something. And so yesterday became a refactor for that. But all's well. I'm back to the same functional state as I was in, but a state that I think my agent is going to be a lot more happy about. And now I'm just going to go back and do the investigation of web environments like I wanted to yesterday. Talking to this camera is weird. But check this out. This is cool. I'm learning just other things that you can address with your agent. Oops. I lost a camera there. Hello? My cam. My cam thinks it exists. Oh. Yeah, okay, this will work. We'll do this for now. Let's shrink it though. One thing that was bothering me is my OBS where I'm streaming from is just kind of like a wreck right now. So I'm trying to figure out how to deal with it. But I did find that I could do cool things like, check it out over here. I can say, what camera am I using on the John and screen scene? Yep. Okay, switch that one to the other one. All right. So it can not only see my setup in OBS, but also, ready? Will it do it? Oh, it did it. You should rightfully ask why I'm doing this right now, since I'm supposed to be working on Rook. And as per tradition, the first part of every day is to work on something completely different than what I said I was going to work on. But there is good reason for it. OBS has been wasting a little bit of my time every day. Every time I log back on, it's forgotten how to stream to YouTube, and it takes like 5 minutes every day to set that up, and it's annoying. So I spent 10 minutes today playing with some APIs. You can connect to OBS over WebSocket, and there's all sorts of cool stuff that you can do like this. But we're gonna try using the other camera today. Go back to the other camera. Oh, okay, that's a little bit. Why did the size of the camera source change? Like maybe the camera is the same back and forth, but the little source thing got really small for some reason. Do you know why? Wow. But yeah, so I'll see you guys next time is how it translated that. Okay, anyway. Do you know what it was shaped like before the switch? If you do, then kind of stretch it back out to where it was before. I don't know if it has access to this. No, it's probably just eating my computer. Yeah. Oh. No, okay, that's nice. Well, isn't that? That's really cool. Thanks, buddy. We'll definitely play with that. That is ripe or some Rook interaction. OBS streaming is an environment. It's an application. And whenever I open OBS, then my Rook agent should immediately have the capabilities of that software. All right, let's get back to work. You know what? Rather than going to day 28, I'm going to just pick up the conversation from yesterday. It's probably a change I'll have to make. They should not own their own dwell policy. What does that mean? Water. I've still got some misgivings and questions about the approach that you have in mind. So there will be always on a app level base provider. But the information that it holds will be useful in firing off or triggering or waking up the specialist context providers. You say that but I don't know if I understand why that's important to you. And I think I can see why it should be the other way. So this is the main part we need to chat about. For example, I can imagine the app environment provider recognizing that Chrome is now in focus. But ideally, while Chrome is in focus, we effectively turn over the execution to the Chrome web specific emitter, environment producer. Because that specific one is going to see when the URL changes, and it can use the dwell policy, maybe even the same global dwell policy, and during the situation that Chrome is open, if people change the tabs to a different tab or open a different website, then we won't need the app environment emitter. We'll just need the Chrome emitter, the web environment emitter, and it will be the one that can see all these changes in the URL. But if some other app takes focus, then the web environment emitting specialist sleeps, pauses, because we know those aren't in focus anymore. And the app environment producer just tells us which apps are being brought to the foreground. But if the app producer notices that Obsidian is in the foreground, then that specialist will wake up and it will keep watch over its own windows. Does that make sense? Is anything problematic? Is it concerning that Obsidian will have multiple windows, whereas Chrome will have multiple tabs? Will that cause problems? Slack is another good example that we'll probably try sometime soon. What about timing? Like right now, the app emitter only emits an environment if it's been up for 5 seconds. That's our policy. But then if it only starts then to turn over to the web emitter and we have to wait another 5 seconds, then it's really like waiting 10 seconds for that. So that's not ideal. I want it to be 5 seconds for the app and also 5 seconds for the web. So pretty much when we wake up the specialist environment producer, there shouldn't really be any wait time, except for maybe a tiny debounce. I don't know. Anyway, let's go back and forth a bit. Whoops. I want the ignored directory to truly be ignored. Do it. Oh no, this is a bug. I'm seeing what's coming over from the other running agent. That's no good. That's no good. It also doesn't make much sense. No. What the heck? Oh gosh. Yeah, this is just gloriously demonstrating that it's not environment aware yet. Okay, it's still not communicating too well. I don't understand the idea enough to be comfortable with it. Let's try something new. Inside the ignored directory, inside refactor, create demo.py and write very minimal pseudocode that demonstrates the idea that you have in mind. Just assume the existence of APIs, and you can even just use comments as part of the implementation to tell me what's going on if the details in that area don't matter. Keep it really concise. I just want to see how everything is wired together in your mind. Is it not weird we can do this right now? All right. Yeah. What does a focus episode mean to you? Apps, right? Hmm. Hmm. This is pretty cool, actually. Hmm. All right, at 31 minutes, 28 seconds into this, I'm going to start dictating stuff that might be good for content. So I did kind of a cool thing I've never tried before. I was negotiating with my Rook agent, which is just PyDev under the hood, about how to do a new design change with a code base. And it was complicated, and I couldn't really picture exactly what the agent had in mind. So instead of like just having this English conversation, why not take it back to the type of language that really well encodes this stuff? I told it, write me a pseudocode application that does this. Not something like the actual application that we're getting ready to build is going to be huge. It'll be, 1,000 lines for sure. But I said, write pseudocode in Python, keep it pretty concise, use comments if you need to, and then I looked at it, and actually it's a really good way of concisely communicating something in very specialized language to make sure that the idea is communicated well. And this is a lot easier than natural language when negotiating these ideas with the agent. So another arrow in the quiver. I'll start asking for pseudocode from now on in my preferred language. All right, 33 minutes, 15 seconds is the stop of the little snippet. Actually, you know what? That's exactly what I was supposed to be using this thing for. All right, trying again at 35 minutes, 55 seconds. Okay, I did something I think is kind of interesting today. I was working with my agent and talking through a rather complicated code refactor, and it had some ideas that I was just not liking onto. Natural language conversation was not enough details to make it through. So it occurred to me, this thing's a coding agent, um, and I know a really good language that I'm very comfortable with. The actual thing I'm working in right now is not a comfortable language, but if it could just like pseudocode this up for me really concisely in Python, just like fake it all together, then I could look at that and know exactly what is going on. And so I did that. If you look at this, I said, write up the idea that you have in mind as Python. Make it really concise, fake out the APIs that don't exist, and use comments if you need to just kind of explain what's going on. And it came up with something that really helped clarify the layout that it had in its mind and map it to my mind. So use the right language for the right thing. Maybe the future of code is for just specifying in old developers' minds like what the agent is actually getting up to. Maybe the purpose of code in the future is just for specifying in the old developer's mind what the agent is really up to. I love you, Kumiko. I remember to use the nice camera thing for this one. All right, enough of that. Oof, that's not good. Would it be better if we had an app coordinator that only watched for applications and was not responsible for... Let's keep what we got. I like that. This feels close, but the one thing I don't like is the notion of a focus episode. I don't want the app coordinator controlling the emit after. What if we didn't pass around a focus episode? And instead, just whenever the app coordinator passes off responsibility to the specialist is responsible for its own policy for how long it should wait. And they might be different. Some things will have a very different policy for when it should emit. What do you think about this? Yeah, let's avoid the double wait problem by making the activation of the specialist start immediately. Okay, update your pseudocode to let me understand what you're talking about in this new idea. One problem with this is I don't see any wait time for the... Oh, I see, after 5 seconds. Sure, I guess that's fine. Yeah, okay. I like this. So update. To describe the new situation that you recommend and flesh out a little bit richer set of to-dos. Feels like this is like one file's worth, so I don't know. We can get rid of... Let's merge to-do.markdown and environment subsystem.markdown. And then we'll build it. All right, let's not let that go to waste. Done. Done. Let's try it again. Here's a cute little trick that I do to help the agent and myself keep track of the work that's in progress, especially when it gets complex. So if you find yourself making a big refactor, then sure, there's like the plan mode that you can use. But the thing that I do is I tell my agent to create a to-do list. And I don't mean just like a list of bullets. I mean a list of bullets very intentionally that have, like dash, bracket, bracket. It's the thing that needs a big X or it's not done. And when I tell it this, I say, okay, I can read over the list. It communicates to me what the agent has in its mind, and I can make sure it looks good. And then when I say go, I'll say, make sure you keep these things filled out as you work. Sometimes the agent listens to me, sometimes it like waits till the end, so you have to be a little bit careful about that. You might have to ask it again to fill them out. But it's a good way of being able to look at a shared document and see what the agent has in its mind, how far it's gone through, and you can ask it some targeted questions about it. So try that next time. Tell me what you think. Or tell me something better. What should I be doing? All right, 47 to 49. I love you, sweetie. My wife does my edits. There we go. There I am. All right, this looks beautiful. Let's get rolling. As you're working through this, check the boxes. As you're working through this, check the boxes as you accomplish each component so that I can be aware of the work that you've done. Quick bio break. Let's play. It's cooking, so I can do other stuff, right? Like I can, oops. Just use this agent to be disentangled from everything. No, that's not quite right. Yes, we did that. Camera. No. Yeah, screw it, do it from scratch. I've got OBS running. And you should be able to connect to it via the JavaScript API. Tell me what all my scenes are. The hell you say? Oops, I'm not sure what happened there. There we go. All right, I did this live stream today, so I'm gonna take that URL. Can you take this URL, turn it into a QR code using Python PIL, and then take that image, store it in /temp, and stick it right in the middle of John and screen scene, and put text underneath it that says today's super stream. Cool. I wonder what it thought it did wrong. Interesting. Wow, that's just, I'm gonna do that instead of touching the screen anymore. That's just crazy. Yep, and it's the right QR code because this is the same one. Oh man, that is just too cool. All right. Okay, that was a good experiment. You can remove it now. Both the things that you just created. Actually, but look at this. Something is different. Oh, it put the today's superstream text in the image itself. Very cool. All right, OBS, I'm coming for you. I just wanted to see what was possible. There we go. Hey, mini me. All right, we're finished. Done so far. Okay, should I just start like testing whether the environments are being emitted correctly? Okay. All right, the big test. Uh-oh. Oh no, if I'm using my iPhone's camera, I can't use my iPhone. Oh no, I'm a blur. Whale crap. Well, I've definitely destroyed my iPhone. No. Crap. Huh. My home location arrived. Yeah. What the crap is that? I don't know. Alright. I am on a Maven website. Yeah, Google Chrome. Definitely not seeing Maven. Try one other thing just in case. My email. Oh, yeah, Obsidian too. Okay. Alright, there's Obsidian. Good. No. So far, all the application, so far, all of the environments that come back are of type Mac. Feels. So I guess it doesn't work. How should we debug? I just restarted the servers with where'd you go? It's not a very verbose log. you do it. Sounds a little weird with the paging. I debugged it. Oh gosh, really? On the home screen, can you just go ahead and remove the capabilities bar, and then when I click, there's a view there that says, hey, this is capabilities that have been removed. And like, so let's not even mention that to the user. That feels silly. They need to know the development specifics. After you've done that, let's update the client so that when it wakes up, it checks on accessibility. And if accessibility is not enabled, it leads us through a quick flow, coaching us to turn it on. Tell me if that's hard for some reason, and then we'll negotiate. Oh, oops. Hmm. Oh. Hello again. Okay. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ooh, got them both. Okay, that's a good sign. All right, next up. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Woo! Holy crap. Alright, now we're at the bug that I really need to fix. Because you wouldn't expect that one file to be that many things. Whoops. Okay, that's what that button does. All right, all seems to be well. But I did notice that when it finally pulled in the web environments, that there was a huge flurry of web environments that were basically the same thing. Can you check the logs and stuff and help me figure it out? All right, there they are. Some of those are legitimate, some of them are not. Host and leaf only. Well, maybe. Host and leaf seems like a decent idea, but I worry that we miss some meaningful ancestors. Or maybe the leaf is not terribly stable. Well, okay, like here's a great example. We know that in this one particular case, we can see and at least know that we're in a Google Doc. But is there anything else under this domain that is important besides ugh. Gross. Hmm. This is a directory that contains all of the environmental repositories that I have. Sorry, this is a directory that contains all of the environments that I've hit in the past several weeks. Each file might be quite long, but almost every line in the file is the same. Just look at the last line in every file if you want to see the details. We have entries there for web, Mac, and location environments. For example, read this file right now. I don't want you destroying your context because it's a lot of stuff and most of it doesn't matter. Try this real quick. Actually, no, crap. I don't want you destroying your context because it's a lot of crap in there. But try this real quick. Crap, I have no idea how to do this. Random line. That'll do it. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, get a little bit bigger sampling because it's going to be useful to brainstorm with. And write that out to a different file. All right, go ahead and read that entire file in, and then help me brainstorm. How can we make this generic? The goal is to have environments associated with web addresses. Man, this sucks a little bit. First, we need to work on our goals. The idea of an environment is a place to hang skills and items to remember, effectively hanging agent skills or agents.md. And we need to be able to hang it off of every place where it's meaningful to hang them. For example, some websites might have very, very broad functionality hanging underneath them. On one hand, maybe we just hang everything off of the root domain, such as but if there is too diverse a functionality hanging off of that, then that might not be a good idea. On the other hand, I don't want to be chasing narrow websites too much, because if we go to that's literally a web page that's the video recording of a single Zoom media. I will never go there again. Here's something to think about. Consider that's far too narrow. I can't imagine I would ever want to hang skills off of that. Still not likely. This is super likely. This is also quite likely. And this is probably likely too, although maybe not as likely. I might not care about the generic behaviors on GitHub.com. Or maybe I do. I don't know. The point is, I don't really see a pattern. Stable object pages don't guarantee that they're useful for environments that hold skills, because consider, why would I ever want to hang a skill off a one-off X post? I do like the idea of hanging a skill off a Google Doc. Shoot. Consider this one. Maybe that's good. It's kind of a canonical sheet. See, I have no idea how you'd make this truly generic. What do you think? I do think I see what I'm gonna do. Yes, you nailed it. order to help aid my understanding, create a script that will take an environment prefix such as and it will take a number and it will scan the and return all environments that start with that prefix. I'm trying to prevent you from actually reading that whole file because it's just a big mess. Way too much context. Please don't run the thing. You ran it, you son of a... Oh, okay, that's the way it works. Oh, that's so cool. Good job. Wow. LinkedIn. What the crap are you doing, LinkedIn? That combined with whenever I started programming in Swift, when I started programming in TypeScript, it's like, okay, I can read TypeScript if I squint my eyes really hard. But when I started writing in Swift, when someone else wrote a big chunk of this code in Swift, it's like, I'm gonna roll with it and see how far it goes before it bites me. And it has been nibbling at me. Like I've still got on my screen right now.
The challenge became like, basically, how do you set up a system where you can make earth-shattering changes to the code base, but still feel safe that things are working? There's an entire book about this. You are acting as the engineer trying to wrangle what has instantly become a legacy code base because you don't understand it that deeply. And so one of the classic patterns in that book and in the universal working legacy code is this idea of a strangler pattern, where you wrap the project at some basically public interface that's not going to change much. The challenge became like, basically, how do you set up a system where you can make earth-shattering changes to the code base, but still feel safe that things are working? There's an entire book about this. You are acting as the engineer trying to wrangle what has instantly become a legacy code base because you don't understand it that deeply. And so one of the classic patterns in that book and in the universal working legacy code is this idea of a strangler pattern, where you wrap the project at some basically public interface that's not going to change much. And what was interesting was like, when I would ask an agent to work on the problem, I have found that agents don't necessarily, when they're working on a problem, they take the safest path possible. It's like they'll wrap that agents, when they're working on a problem, they take the safest path possible. It's like they'll wrap away like a scab, this old way of doing things. Found that agents, when they're working on a problem, they take the safest path possible. It's like they'll wrap away like a scab, this old way of doing things, and preserve it as safely as possible so that this new path will work. And they will solve the problem, but I think a human developer would follow what we would call the Boy Scout rule and that this new path is working, it will work. And they will solve the problem, but I think a human developer would follow what we would call the Boy Scout rule and say, oh, there's this other code path that's really bad, and I can turn these 1,000 lines into like a couple hundred lines. And what was interesting was like, when I would ask an agent to work on the problem, I have found that agents don't necessarily, when they're working on a problem, they take the safest path possible. It's like they'll agents, when they're working on a problem, they take the safest path possible. It's like they'll wrap away like a scab, this old way of doing things, and preserve it. The safest path possible. They'll wrap away like a scab, this old way of doing things, and preserve it as safely as possible so that this new path will work. And they will solve the problem, but I think a human developer would follow what we would call so that this new path will work. Safely as possible so that this new path will work. And they will solve the problem, but I think a human developer would follow what we would call the Boy Scout rule and say, oh, there is this other code path that's not really valuable anymore, and I could turn these 1,000 lines into like a couple hundred lines. There is this other code path that's not really valuable. There is this other code path that's not really valuable anymore.
Oops. Aha.
Not really valuable anymore, and I could turn the valuable anymore, and I could turn these 1,000 lines into like a valuable anymore. There is this other code path that's not really valuable anymore, and I could turn these 1,000 lines into like a couple hundred lines. Inevitably compaction would happen, it would lose half its brain. Inevitably compaction would One thing I used to do is I used to have a long-running conversation with an agent for building something, and I would just like always resume that session. And inevitably compaction would happen, and it would lose half its brain. And it was glorious while the context window was not exhausted. Now my goal is actually the opposite. Can I basically launch a new session in my agent and tell it something I want to change, and will it meaningfully do that work? And if I feel like I have that set up, I feel like the quote unquote factory is working well. Quote unquote factory is working well because it's simulating the like someone sends a Slack message to the agent and asks for a change. Working well because it's sort of simulating someone sends a Slack message to the agent and asks for a change. factory is working well because it's sort of simulating the someone sends a Slack message to the agent and asks for a change. But it was glorious while the context simulating someone that sends a Slack message to the agent and asks. Someone that sends a Slack message. Simulating someone that sends a Slack message to the agent and asks for a change. Simulating someone that sends a Slack message to the agent and asks for a change. Would call the Boy Scout rule and say, oh, there are 1,000 lines into a couple hundred lines. Simulating someone that sends a Slack message to the agent and asks for a change. I feel like the quote-unquote factory is working well because it's sort of simulating someone that sends a Slack message to the agent and asks for a change. That sends a Slack message to the agent and asks. Simulating someone sends a Slack message to the agent and asks for a change. The challenge became basically, how do you set up a system where you can make earth-shattering changes to the code base, but still feel safe that things are working? There's an entire book about this. You are acting as the end. How do you set up a system where you can make earth-shattering changes to the code base, but still feel safe that things are working? There's an entire book about this. You are acting as the engineer trying to wrangle what has instantly become a legacy code base because you don't understand it that deeply. And so one of the classic patterns in that book and in the universe of working legacy code is this idea of a strangler. working. There's an entire book about this called Working with Legacy Code. You are acting as the engineer trying to wrangle what has instantly become a legacy. There's an entire book about this, and what I always say about AI coding is it's very similar to that. You are acting as the engineer trying to wrangle what has instantly become a legacy code base because changes to the code base, but still feel safe that things are working. You are acting as the engineer trying to wrangle what has instantly become a legacy code base because you don't understand it that deeply. And so one of the classic patterns in that book and in the universe of working legacy code is this idea of the classic patterns to working legacy code is this idea of a strangler pattern and so one of the classic patterns to working legacy code is this idea of a strangler pattern where one of the classic patterns in working legacy code is this idea of a strangler pattern where you wrap the project at the classic patterns in working legacy code is this idea of a strangler pattern where you wrap the project at some basically public interface that's not going to change much.
Okay. Hmm. Make QR codes for these. Hmm. Don't add any text, just the QR code this time. Okay, make a modification to the script. All right, it's time. Oh my gosh, my screen disappeared. Oh, I know. Where am I? Hello? Hello? There we are. All right. Was it a good day? Yeah, man, I got to work on like the real Rook. You saw me doing a little bit of video editing, thanks to the help of my wife. But well, a lot of good stuff with Rook today. I feel like I'm making progress. I kind of know what I want to do next. It's a good feeling. So, more interesting stuff coming soon.